we were evolved and we had all this awareness and we had all this technology, like we were forced to rest in the winter, we prepared for the winter, and there's all these stories that you hear when you're a kid, especially going to Sunday school, about stocking up on rice and drying your meat so that you can like sit back and drink ale and do all that with your family for like months at a time. And we do not do that. We push through the winter, and I feel like I am just like crawling to get to the end of it. And I've been trying to not be that way and to live authentically also through like the seasons and through what my body needs. And a lot of this comes from my background in yoga. Like I believe in Ayurvedic science, which is basically rooted in seasons. I think we're most healthy when we shift with the seasons, which includes our diet and includes like our rest patterns and all of those things. And so obviously last week I was depressed. It was more than just my body being tired, but I took advantage of that and just kind of like took a break, and I slept for a good long time. And because the reality of it is that like right after my dog died, which I've shared with you, I was super busy and I was working a lot and I was just picking up a lot of shifts. And so I've been talking about in the last couple weeks how I was trying to be like honestly grieving and facing it as it came, but at the same time like balancing my responsibilities. And so that can be really challenging for me, and I get real like there's like a real strong toddler in me that comes out a lot. Like when I'm tired, I just want to cry and be held and like just take a nap. And I've more and more and more started to resent the fact that I have to push through when I'm tired. I would love to like wake up in the morning and just listen to my body and let it tell me what to do. And I mentioned this a couple weeks ago where I was telling you about my like ideal day where I would wake up and I would do yoga and I would stretch and I would go to the gym and I would have like a good 4 hours to do all of these things. And I just more and more and more over the last couple weeks have just been really realizing like how short life is. Like we're at the end of January. Where did it go? And the fact that we only have to do that 12 more times just makes me feel like this year is just to me, it just feels like it's already over. And I know there's so much life that's going to happen. And again, I need to like open myself up to more opportunities. And I need to, I think, plan a little bit less so that I'm more open to opportunities, so that I can feel a little less of this feeling that life is just kind of like taking me under, like I want to feel in control. And again, just brings me back to this theme of duality that I've been talking about since the beginning, where it's like the ideal life has to be a balance of both. Like you have to feel in control of your life. You want autonomy. Autonomy is one of my buzzwords. Like one day I want to be the queen of autonomy. Brene Brown, she took vulnerability, so I can't have that. And who's Jacqueline Novak? She's this genius comedian artist. I've been studying her stuff the last couple weeks in lieu of like going out and doing comedy again on my own. And she kind of took authenticity, which I thought was my thing. I was like, Carmynn Bradley's going to be the queen of authenticity, but Jacqueline Novak, she already claimed authenticity, so I have to find something else to claim. So I'm going to claim autonomy. And I'm sure I'll run into some YouTube video later with somebody else who's already claimed autonomy, and I don't know what's left for me to claim, but who knows. Anyway, I was saying that autonomy is so important, and you want to feel like you are conscious of the decisions that you are making. Like I know that these are my 2 feet, and I feel like I'm choosing to step forward. I don't feel like I'm being pushed or pulled or any of that. But at the same time, you want to balance between like I'm walking forward and I'm making decisions and I'm the hero of my own story, to also like surrendering to this sense of destiny. And I had a great conversation with my younger sister this morning. She is 21 and she is already like at places that I was not at when I was 21. And I was in this period in my 20s where I really wasn't in control and I didn't have a lot of autonomy. And there's a difference, I guess, that I'm grappling with right now between, let's say, like life is a boat and like destiny is a river, and you just like have to sit back and ride the river of destiny and like it'll take you wherever you need to go. And that's a nice image, but obviously that's not the reality. Like sometimes you, even in every attempt to completely surrender and let go, let God, let go, let the universe, whatever it is that you believe, you still have so many things that you have to get done, especially just within the confines of this society. Like my younger sister that I mentioned that I was talking to, she used to be really, really anti like getting a job and making money and all these things that you have to do. And as an older sister, especially when she was like 17, 18, I was like, no, like you need to go to college and you need to do all these practical things and look at all the great things that I've done. And now I feel like I finally realized what she was talking about, that all of these constructs that we have on our planet and in our country, they make the world go round, but they're not like natural things. Like taxes are not natural. You know, our meaning of life is not rooted in these like social constructs that are created in order to like keep our egos intact, you know? And so anyway, there's just like this big bitter toddler in me that is so tired and that like just wishes that winter could be winter, you know, and that I could be busy in the summer. So I've been balancing that and trying to find like trying to find the space to be honest with myself when I need a break and all of that. So anyway, that's what last week was about and why I didn't tell anybody on Wednesday when I changed my mind and said I just need a break this week. And what I was reminded of is this like toxic habit that I did have, especially back in my 20s, which is this whole decade that I've mentioned a lot on the show, where I was really, really mentally ill in my 20s, and really even like starting from 17, like starting from when I went into foster care, and even prior to that. There's a lot of eating disorder stuff from when I was even like, gosh, I remember this memory. I was in first grade and I was sitting down on like a bench at lunch and I was judging like the width of my thighs. In first grade, that's crazy. Like, where does that come from? I think it must have come from my mother, but whether it was like a genetic thing she passed on to me or if it was just like things I was overhearing, that's crazy that is how early that thing started and that I have a legitimate memory of that. I have like 3 pretty clear memories from like kindergarten and first grade. One of them is a dream where I show up naked to school and I'm freaking out. So that wasn't even a real memory, but it's a memory of a dream. It's like Inception. Anyway, and then I have that memory where I'm looking at my fat thighs. And now a bunch of other memories are flooding up. So I guess I have a pretty good memory of my early childhood. But those are just some interesting... There's comedy in them, but they're also very like serious because I think, I don't know, nightmares have been popping up for me the last couple of weeks, and I know that it's like a trauma thing, but I believe that our dreams can like show us stuff. So I guess when I look back to my early childhood and I'm like, wow, I was having nightmares at that time, I think it was indicative of a lot of the stress that my family was under. And kids are often like aware but not aware. Like a kid will be able to sense that there's stress, but they might not be able to articulate it. You know, like a kid might be able to feel in their body and notice that they feel that there's tension in their household, their parents are fighting or whatever. But again, they're not aware to the point of an adult. And I think that's something parents sometimes take for granted, maybe, like how aware a kid can be. And therefore, like, why it's so important, for example, to maybe for parents to split. This is just an example I'm thinking of on the spot. Like, I have a dear friend who's going through a divorce right now, and he was telling me that things were pretty tough and that it wasn't good for his kids to see that. And I think that there is such a selflessness in being able to make that choice, because there's so many voices in our head that are telling us like why what we know is right isn't right. Like we can always I use this word, which is not a word, logify. I think I just used it in a conversation with one of my friends recently to describe this thing that we do. I know it's common in women, but I think it's common in everybody, where we're thinking about everything and we're thinking why we should do it and why we shouldn't do it, and we're going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, when if we stop like thinking about the logic and we really do sit with ourselves and listen to our body or listen to what's actually going on, the answer is often more clear. But we make it more confusing for ourselves, especially for like a person like me or a person like Maria, where we're problem solvers, and that can go too far. Like we can create a problem out of something or make more of a problem out of a thing that's already a problem, because that's how our brains work, you know. And And in a way, that's a good thing. Like, people like us, we're experimenting and we're always growing and we're thinking of new projects, but our life does not always have to be a project. Like, sometimes we can take all of those thoughts aside and like step forward, but obviously there's so many like emotions and things that go along with like making the right decision. So in a sense, I guess, to go back to where I started with like last week and needing to take a break, I didn't think too much about it. Like, I reached out to Maria and I said, like, this is just a day. Like, I have a lot of fatigue going on. Can we push it till next week? She was super understanding, but in a past life, and by past life, I mean like a decade ago, I wouldn't have been able to say that. I wouldn't have been able to voice that I need a break. I would have been bombarded by all the thoughts that I had about like what I owe people, and that's why having like a 9-to-5 job just like doesn't work for a person like me anymore, because there's so many times, like as a teacher, where I didn't feel good and I had to get up and go to work because I had to, like, because that's what we're supposed to do. Going back to what I was talking about there's so many things in society that we have to get done that just essentially, for me lately, just like gets in the way of the work that I really want to do, Anyway, I'm rambling, but it feels good to ramble. And I just appreciate you all being here, and it feels good to be back. I was a little bit like feeling kind of a resistance in me today, but I knew that I was like ready to get back at this and ready to be in front of an audience again. So I appreciate it. I've been doing a lot of work, a lot of self-study, a lot of preparation for comedy, a lot of stuff for acting, and it's been just really, really fun and really interesting. But again, it's good to be back here and just sharing all these things. I'd like to take a break in about a minute, but I just want to tell you I'm going to revisit what I had been talking about. I just wanted to take this time to visit with what's been happening in the last couple weeks and, be me just like rambling, being silly. It feels good to have that space, but I've been talking about in past episodes healing, and specifically I remember like the last episode I was with you all, I was talking about chakras, and I kind of ended with the first and second chakra. So I'm going to pick up with all of that when we get back from the break.
The year is 2980, and we now know that death is not the end. A soul can be extracted from the recently deceased and be used to create a blue liquid called essence. It can bring a person back to life.
We'll get her back.
I hope so.
It's an expensive process used by the rich and powerful. The rest, they do what they can to survive.
Stay right there.
You told me you're hiding from some dangerous people.
Let's knock on the door. I spent the last year searching for the Deep Star. A bounty so big that the entire galaxy could be yours.
People have been looking for the Deep Star for years. It can't be found.
It's because they can't find the distress beacon. I know where it is.
If we find the Deep Star, we could get enough credits to bring Mom back.
Blast off.
Guys, we have company.
You can run, but you cannot hide. Prepare for impact.
I am now authorized to take action.
And now you die.
No!
Ready to buy a home? Whether you want to move out of your parents' home for the first time, own a home after renting for years, or buy a place with a spouse or partner, purchasing your first home is a big step. Finding the right home for you and your family has never been easier. New American Funding can help you determine how much house you qualify for, what your payments may be, and get you pre-approved, which will help you put in a stronger offer when you do find your new home. Before you start the home buying process, it's important to consider everything that you want in a home and what that means to you. There are several things you should consider when buying a home. The neighborhood. Location, location, location. School district. Review what school district the house is in. Even if you don't have kids, having a home in a desirable school district will pay off when it comes time to sell your home in the future. Commute times. Check the routes to work, school, grocery stores, and more to see how busy they are and how much time these routes will take. Crime rate. Before you get too involved in the home buying process, check out the crime rates for the neighborhoods you are interested in. Our complete property profile report can give you property ownership, historical tax and mortgage data, neighborhood and school data, local market conditions, and more. Find the right home for you and your family with your complimentary property profile from New American Funding. To get pre-approved or to get your complimentary property profile, contact us today.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the second segment of this episode of Mental Melodies. I'm your host here, Carmynn Bradley, former therapist, former high school teacher. If you're just tuning in, this is a show where I talk about all things healing and mental health. I get pretty candid. I talk about just a lot of the stuff that I've been through, and I think, again, like I mentioned, I had a really good conversation with my little sister today, and I was just telling her about how important it is that people like me who feel compelled to speak about these things. I think that there is an underlying purpose, and that purpose is to continue to eliminate like toxic shame in our society. That's why I love comedy so much, because in comedy you can talk about whatever. I, as a very sheltered person, like I didn't dip myself into the comedy world for a long time because it was a little too much for me. Like I used to be the kind of person who couldn't handle really like raunchy movies, and I don't know, I've grown up a lot, and now I just think comedy is one of the highest art forms, honestly. To be able to find the catharsis in a lot of the stuff that you've gone through personally or things that you relate to, and giving people an opportunity to laugh, like especially like a big like chest or belly laugh, that kind of thing is catharsis, and that, performance and healing dates back to like, you think of Greek tragedies, if you learned about that in school, like the whole purpose of having artists is so that they can go out in front of people and allow an entire crowd to feel what they're feeling so that you can heal, right? Because feeling is healing. And that sums up a lot of what I've said over the past few months. Feeling is healing, not pushing down your feelings, allowing them to come up, giving yourself space to face it when it happens. Healing from trauma is about pulling up feelings that you were not able to feel, especially, early childhood. I talk about, having early childhood trauma and a lot of the tumultuousness of my early childhood, and that being the root cause for a lot of the mental health issues that like kind of started in my 20s. And it's such an interesting, I apologize, I said I was going to talk about chakras. I'm sure I'll get there, but sometimes I just have to lean into the moment. And anyway, I being mentally ill was weird for me. Obviously, it's not like anybody's like, man, I really want to be depressed or whatever. That wasn't like my plan going into college. But I say that it was weird for me because I was a very, I've mentioned this before, like a happy person in high school, and I was always a go-getter, and I did my homework by myself. I shared this once before. I didn't have to be told to do my homework. I always figured things out. I was one of those very like highly intelligent kids. I got lucky that my intelligence fit with the way society views intelligence and with the school system and all of that. I love books. I love reading. I love learning, like all of those things. My creativity got squashed because I was also a slightly autistic girl with childhood trauma, a stepdad coming into my life who wasn't great, and so I became this like people pleaser, and school became about grades, and I really ate that up. I ate up I want straight A's, I ended up with a 4.5, like valedictorian, all of these things. That was all great for me, and that was my story, but I had instances where I was this person that I am now, where I am authentic and I have a voice and I say shit even if people don't want to hear it. And so I have this like balance of being this like nice, very blossomy, like bubbles type personality. I talked about this, the Powerpuff Girls. I'm using this to conceptualize my identity because I'm becoming a buttercup because I have to be. Because the world is a place that needs people who will just say things and not be afraid of like what it will do to their reputation. Like that, it's okay that you all don't see me as the sweetest person in the world all the time, because it's important to air grievances, or, you know, to talk about anything and everything and the truth and all of that, you know. Maybe I'll be the poster board girl for truth. Maybe somebody hasn't taken that yet. But I was saying that it was weird for me that I became mentally ill because I was a power through kind of girl, you know. In high school, I powered through. And I did have a lot of signs of like pretty intense like ADHD. It wasn't that like things came pretty easy to me, but I also had these weird, like I would stay up later than my whole family, and I would like be awake for a few hours and study and then sleep and then be awake, and then I was never like fully rested, and every once in a while I would crash. Like, you know, that's also kind of like bipolar tendencies, which if you were listening to the episode I brought my uncle on, he was talking about how you can see that in a young kid. There were all these signs of like mental illnesses back then, but that didn't really matter because for me, I didn't identify as somebody who's mentally ill. I identified as somebody who made it work. This is so interesting because I was just talking to my roommate about this yesterday, where he said something about like, you just made that work, and I was like, I think that's my middle name, and you know, as a joke, it is something that I realized that I identify as, you know, going back to what I was saying about being like a problem solver. I always made things work. I wanted straight A's, I got them. Like I wanted to finish my project, I got it done, even if I didn't have to sleep. I wanted to be the fastest swimmer on the team, so I practiced. Like I did everything that I needed to do to make things work, and I think I still am that way. But again, it wasn't until like looking back, and even now, there's a lot of things I didn't even realize until now about mental illness, like as a kid. Mostly then it was just me like dealing, and that's what kids do. They have to, they adapt. You know, people are always saying kids are so resilient, and it's a lot of times it's ways for grown-ups or parents to like push aside, I think, the responsibility they have to make it so that kids don't have to do that. Like, yes, we do survive. Yes, we do adapt. Yes, we can experience intense trauma as a kid and come out okay or whatever, or eventually not be okay and then heal from that. Like, humans are amazing, but I believe the purpose of evolution is so that we can get away from that. Like, I think that the goal of evolution, like, excuse me for pretending I'm Darwin here, but the goal of evolution, I believe, is to get to peace, is to get to a space where all humans can feel peace, where there's more love and light and all of that. Like, if that's not the purpose of evolution, then I don't know what it is. Somebody comment and tell me what they think their theory is. But for me, I think that that's where we need to be going. We need to evolve so that we have more kindness and awareness, and again, peace, so that we can, you know, get to a point where we are sifting through the seasons naturally. Like, all humans want is for their lives to be easier on them. Like, that's all that we're doing, is we're either coping with it because it isn't easy, or we're finding a way to make it easier, you know, hence technology. Technology is here to like make life easier for us, you know. And so, back to my point about kids, like being resilient, is that, you know, kids, I think that they shouldn't have to be. And there's this, you know, people talk about snowflakes and, you know, like bagging on gentle parenting because, oh, life shouldn't be easy for these kids because life wasn't easy for me. But like, let it go. You were born then, they were born now, they're kids. Like, if life can be easy for kids, why not make it easy for kids? I don't know. I'm overgeneralizing, but this is me just like, you know, kind of processing my like mental health journey and just seeing how far back it went, you know, and there's that whole argument I've talked about, you know, biology versus our environment. And obviously there was a lot of trauma in my childhood, and then there was the biology of me being this like super neurodivergent, like highly intelligent kid, and then you push those two together and it was like this creature. Just kidding. Anyway, so what I was saying is that, like, as somebody who didn't identify with any of those mental illnesses I may have had as a kid, I just identified as somebody who was like, like I'm smart, like I'm a good kid, I listen to my teachers, I do all these sports, like I'm grateful for my able body because I can do all these things. And then when that kind of went by the wayside in college, I was shocked. Like my lupus diagnosis in 2013 was a shock to me because I was like, that's not who I am. I'm somebody who can push through. Like if I'm not feeling good, I just push through. I remember one time I had this like really bad flu and I was vomiting a lot. And I did that for a couple hours, and then I got up and I went to swim practice. And I was swimming and burning off like 3,000, 4,000 calories and doing like butterfly and all of that stuff. That's who I was. And so my identity had to shift when illness became something I had to face. When it was like, you can't ignore this anymore, you know, and I got really sick in college. And the eating disorder stuff I've mentioned a lot because it's been a huge struggle for me. If it's true that it stemmed from when I was that young, like first grade, that's crazy. Of course it would be blown out of proportion as a grown-up. Like it just kept building and building and building, and all of those thoughts, you know, without any guidance, without like somebody really telling me to love my body. Like I don't think that whole movement came out until, I don't know, well after I graduated from college, I think. I don't know, or maybe sometimes you're just not aware of it until you are, you know. You don't know until you know. But anyway, yeah, so it was weird for me. Mental illness was weird for me. Physical illness was weird for me when it happened because obviously I guess you don't identify as sick until you get sick, you know. Anyway, I honestly have no idea where I was going with that, but I guess I'll shift then to talk about just like healing and the chakras. And because when I did get sick, and I've said this before, I was given this opportunity to shift that identity, right? And it's not that I wanted to become somebody who was like, now I'm sick, this is my badge of honor, like, you know, that's not what I wanted, but I had to lean into that for a bit in order to find healing. And how it initially started was with yoga, you know, and the chakras that I want to touch on are a part of yoga. But before I learned about that, really what it was for me was trying to find a way to exercise, because exercise was such a huge part of who I was. And it was a part of that eating disorder too. Like I was doing it too much, and so I had to find a way to move my body in a way that was healthy. Because when I was diagnosed with lupus, I was like coaching cheer, I was a resident advisor, I was a peer advisor, I was taking like 21 units, I was just about to start my pathway to become a teacher. So I was going off campus to do teaching stuff and taking those classes. I was trying to minor in Spanish and also major in literature. I had a million things going on, and that's who I was that's like who I've always been or whatever. But again, I had to take a step back from that, and I had to quit jobs. Oh my gosh, it was terrible. And this is going back to like how I started this episode, you know, whereas like last week was such a success for me because I had this obligation, and I feel like I have viewers who are listening and benefiting from this. And like, it's not that I feel that I owe anything to you all. I really don't. This is something that I have been manifesting for a really long time. I feel grateful to do it. I feel like it's an opportunity. I don't feel like I owe you anything, but I'm grateful that you're here, and I'm grateful that you benefit from it. And so maybe that's part of the reason, like I had to be in this mindset that I'm at now to be able to say like it's okay to take a break for 1 week, you know. But when that opportunity to take a break first presented itself, I was forced into it, you know, because I wasn't going to quit my one job so that I could focus on another. I was going to make it all work, sacrificing usually sleep and obviously health. My health before I was diagnosed with lupus, like I touch on that a little bit. I don't know if you all really know what that means, but like I was having migraines where I would like lose my vision for a bit, and then I'd be going to class and I was just having this like spinning headache migraine. I'm like losing my sight. All of my joints hurt. Like everything hurt. I was having like terrible chest pain. Gosh, I was like barely 20, and I was going through all this crazy stuff that led to like all these emergency room visits. And a lot of it was probably, again, psychological. Like, and I've talked about how, you know, when you have childhood trauma, again, it gets stored in your body, and then it's going to pop up eventually. Like things are going to poke it. And so all these things were being poked, and I was unaware of it. And so I was just really, really sick. But again, what this did is it gave me an opportunity to revisit basically how I lived my life, and to reconceptualize how many responsibilities I can have and what really mattered to me. But what I had to do is I had to really take a step back from like all of it, and that's not what I wanted to do. And I remember feeling kind of like bitter at the time, because I had another friend who, she was actually diagnosed with lupus a little like right before I was, but she took a year off from school and just like went home and hung out with her family and like rested. And I at that time didn't have that opportunity, because I've shared with you that I was in foster care my senior year of high school. And so like summers in between college for me were always very unpredictable. I didn't know if I had a space at my mom's house, or if I was going to go back to my foster family or this other family that was kind of like my pseudo foster family. And so I had a very tumultuous like end of high school through college, like I don't really know where I'm going, like I'm floating through life kind of thing. And again, that goes back to what I was saying about like autonomy, that I really was like in the boat of life, but it wasn't in this beautiful surrendering kind of way. It was like I'm in a raging waters, and I just have to hold on and like hope that I don't drown from this, and like life is just pulling me. And obviously, to some extent, I was making some of my own decisions. Like I chose what college I went to. I wanted to go to Stanford, but I went to UCSD, which is still a pretty good school for an intellectual like me. And, I made all of those choices, but just a lot of the things were just like happening to me, and that leads to like victim mindset and all of that. But, anyway, so I was talking about like healing my relationship with my body, and I think all this backstory is very, very relevant to get there, because you have to. It's crazy. You really do have to, I think, sometimes like be tossed into it in order to learn those lessons. It's not like they handed me the paper that they did at the rheumatologist, and I was like, oh, an illness, like all I need to do is rethink the way I live my life. And like, it wasn't that easy. It was like years and years of trying to figure it out. So anyway, I'm going to take a break, and then I will get back to all of this in just a couple of minutes.
Hi, I'm Deacon T with Modern Word Ministries. It's great to be with you today. Just a short little promo for our show. Every Sunday morning we have service, and you can follow us at 10 a.m. Pacific time on modernwordministries.org. And if you missed us or you want to see some of our older messages, go ahead and check us out on socialmediashows.com every single morning at 9 a.m. It's a great way to kick off your day, get a little bit of the word in you, get something uplifting, get you started off on your way. If you're looking for prayer or you need some help, reach out to us. If you go to our website, again, that's modernwordministries.org, you can interact with me via telephone, via DM, text message, whatever you want. I'll get right back to you. So if you need prayer, you need help, you just need somebody to talk to, Modern Word Ministries is here for you. We are your church in the community. So until you see you next time, be blessed, everybody. Bye-bye.
I was always smarter than the other kids. I matured at an early age. I was always a daydreamer, but I surprised my foster parent all the time.
You have come a long way, Cal. I'm proud of you.
As I learned by myself with no homeschool or public school, I was always alone as far back as I can remember. I'm an orphan and never met my real parents, and I never wanted to. Books soon became my new friends. They never talked back, and I could always rely on them to be there for me. Other kids my age made fun of me. They called me a freak because I knew more than them. I learned to keep my mouth shut. My foster parent didn't really pay attention to me while I grew up. He always thought I was weird.
I wouldn't be in this mess if it wasn't for you. You told me to drown my dad. What the fuck is wrong with you? How twisted are you?
You just murdered your father. They'll start looking for him. They'll eventually see the boat rocking alone in the lake.
Hey, do you need any carports or anything? What the hell are you doing on my property?
No, sorry, I was just leaving.
Then get the hell off my property. I don't need you and you little shits fucking up my property. Hey, do I know you?
No, I don't think so.
Aren't you Crop's son?
Yeah,
How's he doing?
he's okay.
Is he still drinking?
Hi everyone, welcome back to the third segment of this episode of Mental Melodies with your host here, Carmynn Bradley. Thank you for tuning in. I keep reminding myself to be present and take it slow, but today these words are just flowing out. And part of it is because I mentioned Jacqueline Novak, again, genius comedian. She's got this special on Netflix, but it's very, what's the word? Nuanced is not the word I'm looking for. She's, like a literary person, very much like me. I loved it, but I think you kind of have to like specific things to like it. But at the same time, maybe not. I don't know. Maybe everybody would like it. It's just a really funny, hour-and-a-half long special about blowjobs, but it's also about life and existentialism. And I was just eating it all up. And sometimes when I watch certain comedians as I'm studying, I will kind of soak up their mannerisms. I noticed that while there's a lot of preparation that I need to do, writing out a script or whatever, most of the time I can just watch. Even with singing, I can just go watch, and then when I get on stage, the stuff that I kind of needed to embody from that person that I was admiring or studying or whatever will just kind of happen. So anyway, watching her and just the freedom that she had on stage, I think that's coming out today, but it feels good to, I don't know, be that way, just cracking jokes a little bit. But anyway, I was just sharing my journey to healing, and there's all these different story points. I've talked about narrative therapy before, and that's a whole journey where you have to look through your past and your present and how you told your stories and figure out a way to tell it differently, for example, to get out of a victim mindset, because I deign to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. I think there's value in a victim mindset, at least from the start. I think there's value in me saying that I did live in a household with an abusive man. I was a kid living in a household with a stepfather who did things that were way, not okay. And that's valuable to say. And I think it's valuable when you first start to go to therapy to be able to admit that. Many of the therapists that I've had have validated that for me. And even with just one or two sentences of being bro, that was fucked up. That's okay to acknowledge. Perhaps me saying victim mindset is okay is not the right way to say it. Maybe it's just that you're allowed to acknowledge the truth of situations, right? Especially when you're healing from trauma, I talk about these emotions being stuck in your body. If you're pulling up emotions that came from something that really did happen to you, right? You really were a victim in that situation, then you are allowed to, I don't really like that term, but you can give yourself permission to say I was the victim in this situation and I need to heal from this, and I need to right now, as a let's say it's me and I'm in therapy now and I'm healing from something that happened to me when I was 5. I can feel that same fear, that same shame, whatever it is that my 5-year-old was feeling. Sometimes you have to pull it up and you have to let your 32-year-old self feel that right now in that moment and completely validate that, Victim mindset is toxic when it becomes becomes like a belief that you have about your life. So if I'm a victim because this happened to me then, and now I'm a victim now, I'm going to start attracting it. Sidebar, I'm presenting on Saturday at Zen Bar. If you go to my Instagram, you can see the information. Just go to lvyogatherapy.com to get tickets if you want. And I'm going to talk about perception, and it's something that has been coming up for me a lot lately. And there's a bunch of, different ways of saying the same things. Perception comes up for me a lot because I have done a lot of work with it, and this is going to be like in further episodes because it's a whole thing. But I'm going to be talking about it again on Saturday morning at about 10 a.m. And I'm going to give you a 5-minute spiel about perception. But essentially, like if you tie in what I'm going to say about that with the law of attraction, I believe that you can you can create your own reality. We often do create our own reality. And again, it's this balance of like, do you have the autonomy? Like, are you choosing to create your reality that way? Are you aware of what you believe about yourself? Maybe not. That's why like therapy is so important. That's why getting sick was so important for me, because it was an opportunity again for me to take a step back and be like, whoa, like a lot of the things that happened to me, I didn't choose that. Or a lot of the things that I'm doing now, even though I did choose it, it might not be the right way. Like, how can I rethink a way that I live my life? But if you have, again, a toxic victim mindset, and that's like a belief that you hold about yourself, like, I am powerless, people are always out to get me, that's what's going to lead to these toxic mental illnesses. Like, immediately I'm thinking like schizophrenia. If you're in schizophrenia level mental illness and you're paranoid and you're constantly checking yourself, even PTSD is like that. Like if you're like, oh, I'm jumping all the time, or like I always feel like somebody's following me, that is a toxic thing. That's when the victim mindset is like, I talk about like quagmires and bogs. Like I think of those emotions that you haven't dealt with as being kind of like that. They're like little scummy ponds inside of your body, and they get stuck places. Eventually you won't have any more room. And I genuinely believe that like that can even lead to being obese, because you have these like energies stuck in your body and you're not stretching and you're not mobile. Like for me, I was again 19, 20, and I was having intense like knee pain to the point where I had a handicap sticker at one point. People were looking at me funny, but I was limping because I had energy like stuck in my joints. And part of that was from like being unhealthy, exercising too much. I was doing like backflips on basketball floors. I was working all these different jobs. So of course, like my body itself was just taking a toll, but also like trauma, if you think about it, is just getting stuck. Like think of the image of, like that hallway closet, we have all that crap in it, and like you open it up and it just like floods out at you. That's what it is to like sweep stuff under the rug, to not deal with your trauma. It's like you have this closet. Think of your body as like the closet that can house all of these different things. And if you're just like, I don't want to deal with it right now, I'm just gonna like stuff it here in my kidney, then you have kidney disease. And like, I don't want to deal with that right now, I'm gonna stuff it here. Where do I have space? Like now your ankle hurts. And that sounds silly, and I'm saying it in a silly way on purpose to highlight the fact that like that's actually what happens. And that is actually what happened to me. I was diagnosed with lupus. I said it a million times today, but what that came with was all these different like physical symptoms that were, again, things that could be healed psychologically. I didn't know that then. All I knew was that like I'm sick and this sucks, and like I can't push through anymore. Like I can't work 5 million jobs and do all these things. Like what? That's a whole part of my identity. Like I thought I was a superhero, not a human. We start like denying our weaknesses when we have to become, the person that I had to be to like deal with trauma or survive. Because a lot of it was that, like in high school for me, it was like, I have to make sure that I can survive outside of this. Like as soon as I get out of this household, like I'm never going to talk to this man again, and I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to find a way to figure it out, right? Carmynn, make it work, Bradley. And I did. But again, with having to make it work, with that thing I was talking about kids, where they're resilient, like they do adjust because they have to, but that doesn't mean that they should have to. And that's where, gosh, I'm just like, oh my gosh, word vomiting today. But I'm thinking about how, like it's nearly impossible. It was impossible for me during that period of time when I was a kid through high school to get the kind of therapy I needed. Because ultimately, like, I can't heal from being in a household with a man that terrifies me if I'm still in that household. That's just the truth of the matter. Like, the justice system didn't do me justice back then. Not to say that it would have been better if I had been in foster care earlier on. Probably not. Like, I'm grateful that I had time to live with my siblings, that I was there with my mom, even though I was upset with her that she didn't leave, all this stuff. Like, the fact of the matter is that we had, like, my stepdad was in and out. He was, getting arrested multiple times. There was all this drama going on. And so I'm dealing with that, and I'm going to school and I'm like, I'm fine. And I had my friends and I was completely extroverted back then. And again, I had really great grades. So when eventually the stuff that was happening in my household was too much for people to ignore, and like I had a black eye and my swim coach had to say something, it was like, well, it's too late now. Like, I'm a senior in high school. I now have all this trauma that has carried me on through being 5 years old. Like, what do I do with it now? And so that's where it's just, my heart just like breaks for these situations, like you really can't do anything about it until you become an adult. And this was why I even thought about this when I was becoming a therapist. Like, that was one thing I felt so powerless to do as a teacher. Like, I immediately, when I became a teacher, I saw it in me. I saw what my, like, not true gift, because I was good at teaching literature too, but my true gift lied in giving these kids space to be themselves. That's who I was. I was the teacher that had like 30 kids in her room at lunch, and people were making friends that they wouldn't have made because they were in my room feeling safe. That's the kind of person I am. Like, even visiting my nieces and nephews like last week or whatever, like you'll often find me at parties. I'm that girl, like either with the animals or with the kids, and the kids are all around me and they're sitting on my lap and they're telling me things and they're, telling me their names and they're playing with me and all of that. That's who I am. And I think that, like, to my core, that's who I am. And I think it's like a beautiful, wonderful thing. And again, going back to like, but then there's who you have to be and there's who you become. It's like, I'm very kind and I love that about myself, but boy, oh boy, will I tell the truth about people who have done me wrong, especially because they've done, like, my sisters and my siblings. I love them so much, and that was always such a motivator for me. But anyway, I'm rambling again. Oh my goodness. I need like 4 hours today, you guys, to get to what I need to get to. But again, it feels good to talk about all these things, and I think episode after episode, like, I just get braver. For a long time, the stuff that I wanted to say and that I've been saying was stuff that I was just writing down, and I think I had shared to you guys that I want to write a book, and I think now I'll be able to take a lot of the material that I'm saying, I'll be able to write it down. But it was really hard for me for a long time to say a lot of these things because, like, I was worried about backlash or something, and now I don't care about that anymore because, again, there's a lot of people in our lives, like manipulative people, narcissists, who make themselves feel bigger than they are. Maria and I were talking about someone like this earlier, like my stepdad. When you're a kid and you're powerless and you really are a victim to somebody like that, like, you feel like if you say the truth, like, something's really going to come get you. And that's how it was. And it was tough for me being like the truth teller in my household back then. There's one memory, I don't know if I've shared this or not yet, but it was one of the summers when my stepdad had hit my brother. One time he broke my brother's leg. It was a whole thing. And so this one summer, I don't think it was that specific instance, but anyway, he was out of the house for a summer. And I was like, yes, fuck yes, like, freedom. I got to actually hang out with my friends that summer. But then there was a court date, and it was basically like the determining court date if this man was going to get to come live with us again, which was just crazy to me. Like, why should that even be an option? Like, this man has been, like, social services has been called on this man year after year after year from when I was 5 till now. Why is that even an option? But it was. And I show up, and I've never liked him. He's not even my dad. That made it easier for me to tell the truth. But I'm crying because I'm like, this is another, like, opportunity for me to say something that's going to fall on deaf ears. And, like, it doesn't matter because my siblings are lying because that's their dad. So they're saying they want him back. And to some extent they did. I didn't. And then I ended up getting a lot of backlash from like my siblings and from him because they blamed me because he was out of the house for like an extra month after that. It was ridiculous. Again, the justice system is just like, oh, it's insane. Anyway, wow, so much backstory today. I hope you're following me. I think that you are. I think sometimes I think that I don't make sense when I usually do. And that's a thing that I've had to heal from. So anyway, we got one more segment of this. We're going to take one more break, grab a coffee. See you back in a couple minutes.
Traditional TV is going away. Hollywood is starting to fade. People are demanding real stories from real people. Our voices are now being heard in our own way. Podcasts, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and TikTok Live are becoming the norm. Internet TV has now reached the highest demand in human history. Social media shows is now the new media of the century.
Hello, everyone. This is Joseph Skoda with Social Media Shows. Well, I thank all of you for your support through these last several years, and it's been a lot of fun. We've given people a voice they never had before. Now, Social Media Shows is always collaborating with our veterans to help them do things and help out the veterans who are struggling today. And we teamed up with GI Connections, connecting veterans with resources. So please consider helping and donating to this great cause because we're always doing things for veterans. So GI Connections, Social Media Shows, and you is what makes the world a better place. Once again, Joseph Skoda, proud United States Air Force veteran.
Hi everyone, welcome back. This is our last segment of today's episode of Mental Melodies with your host Carmynn Bradley. I've been talking a lot of stuff about my life story. I started with this kind of like apology, even though Maria keeps saying, don't apologize. But I do want to be better, you know, like I could have taken a second last Wednesday to be like, just kidding, it's going to be next week. And there was a thought that I had in the first segment that I didn't really dive into it because it felt like it would come up later, and here it is now. But there's this like thing that came up when I was like really depressed where I would just like flake on people, and I was thinking of examples of times when I've done that, even like recently, where I'll say something to somebody, like I'll throw out kind of a half commitment, and that's something I'm trying not to do, and I've been working on that for a while. I used to work on it a little more intensely, like it was a thing. When you first start to work on something, you have to kind of hold it in your mind for a long time, like if you're building a new habit, right? So if something I'm focusing on right now is like making sure that I'm making intentional commitments, I had to kind of hold that in my mind for a while. And every time I made a commitment, I had to think about that, you know? But I don't think about that as much anymore because I've kind of evolved, and I definitely do make more intentional commitments. But sometimes I still get swept up in like, especially when things are booming, you know, like you have an audition here and you have a podcast somebody wants you on there, and you have somebody inviting you to a comedy thing, and oftentimes I'll have like 5 invites on one day, and that's so overwhelming for me. Usually on those nights I just stay home and write music because I'm like, this is a sign, because if I can't pick, then I just have to pick me, you know. But I've made like offhand commitments, like I'll say to Kenny Davidson sometimes, like, yeah, I'm going to bring my guitar to Don't Tell Mama on Saturday. Then I don't show up, and in my mind I'm like, well, he probably didn't hear me anyway, which isn't true. And I need to stop doing that where I downplay like my value in somebody's life or something, or that they like don't care if I show up. That's like a trauma thing that I have to deal with, you know, like people are watching this show. And so again, like I said, it's not that I feel some obligation, like, oh, I'm here for my viewers. I'm not. I've mentioned that I'm here for myself. This is like a very selfish thing for me. I believe that it will help people. I believe that it's a purpose that I've had, but for the most part, like, I'm here because it's something that I've been creating for a long time, and Maria believes in me, and I love doing it, and it's therapeutic for me, and like I need to talk, and like I have this book I need to write, and this is the way that it's gonna get written, you know. And yeah, like I'm healing. There's shame that I'm releasing by having this space, and so Yeah, and it's been such an interesting like lesson learning to be selfish, and I think that again just like goes back to kind of this period that I've been like really wrestling with today of like when I was diagnosed with lupus and like what that meant for me, because again what I was kind of talking about was having all these different jobs and feeling this just like deep sense of obligation, like I can't quit that and also this. And at that time, so interesting, oh my gosh, I love microcosms. I think I've talked about this a little bit, like there's always like bigger things that are the same as the little things, you know. And so back then it was like I had all these plates that I was juggling and I had to drop most of them. I was thinking like maybe I'll just drop one job and it'll help me get healthy. I ended up dropping all of them. Like I had plans I was going to pursue my teaching master's actually at UCSD still. What I did because I got sick is I kind of put that all on hold. I even quit. I was captain of the cheer team. Again, resident advisor, peer advisor, like all these different things. I was taking like 21 units. I no longer pursued my Spanish minor, which sucks for a girl like me who needs that like A, you know, like I needed the A to show that I did the work. I needed the degree to show that I did the work. So it's like, well, now that I don't have the Spanish minor, like nobody's going to believe I even studied Spanish or went to Spain, but that's bullshit. That's not true. I'm in a space right now with music where I'm like, do I need to go get another degree to show that I study music? But like, no, I know that I've learned how to be a learner. Jacqueline Kovac made a joke about that in her comedy special. Like, I'm a lifelong learner. And you know, if you're somebody like me who's like been using the school system to get through life, what that means, because that's a break on your taxes. But anyway, at that time in college, I had to literally take a step back from everything. And I ended up moving up to Orange County with the intention of like living with my sister, which didn't work out because I thought that would help in like feeling sick and all of those things. But yeah, I had to start. That was when I started to learn that lesson of like, you can be honest with people and most of the time they receive it well, you know, but it's like that fear, and especially coming from the trauma background that I did, whereas like nothing was ever good enough in my household, and being the A+ student who could be good at any sport, whatever she tried was never good enough. Like there was not a lot of positive feedback from my stepfather. My mom always supported me, but she was drowning in her own crap, and so that's a whole other story for another day. But anyway, yeah, so I had to start to learn that lesson of like being able to say, like I remember specifically reaching out to my bosses for the peer advising thing and like telling them that I had to quit, and that was really, really hard for me. And quitting cheer was one of the most difficult things for me because that brought me a lot of happiness, but my body simply couldn't do it at that time. And I ended up being able to revisit it later, and I coached cheer and I got my backflip back like in my early 20s. And so, you know, I think when things are meant for you, they're either meant for you for a time, or like oftentimes you could take a break from them and then they'll come back, and that's all valid and true. But all this to say that like I had to get sick in order to like find the pathway to healing. And I was saying that like what that kind of led me to was yoga. And I guess I'm pausing because I'm like, I don't know. That wasn't my initial thing. My initial thing, again, was just like taking a step back from things. And that was like really the lesson that I had to learn, was that like you don't have to do everything. And so it's interesting because I'm in that, what I mentioned, the microcosms, I was thinking of the comparison between the plates that I was juggling and then these moments now where I have a lot of things to do and a lot of people asking me to show up. And in the moments when there's so many, sometimes I just have to choose myself. And it feels very similar. That was back then. In college, it was on a large scale, you know, multiple jobs, multiple degrees, all of these things. Right now, sometimes it's just on a small scale, like one day. I have 5 different things people are asking me to do. Well, I'm just going to play my guitar, you know, and I feel less and less guilty every time I do that because there's no reason really to feel, I deign to say that too because guilt is a feeling, you know, and if it rises up, allow yourself the moment to like feel it, but don't sit in it. Don't allow yourself to like become guilt, which leads to shame. You know, I feel guilty because I can't show up for these people, therefore I'm a bad person, I'm a bad friend, or I'm a bad fellow musician, or whatever. You know, like those things simply aren't true. But it's taken me a long time to get to the point where I can like communicate, or where I can not sit in that guilt. And I think that stems kind of from what I was saying earlier about being kind of this like people-pleasing child. And I think that partially comes from like being a young girl, and then partially came from like, again, just like the household I was in, that my stepfather wasn't somebody that you could ever please, so it didn't really matter. And then I don't know, this sense of like perfectionism. I think I had a hyper independence when I was younger that partially is in me. Like that's partially who Carmynn is genetically, and I'm learning that over and over again. Like, I was planning out comedy today, and I was thinking about talking about how, like, I wish I were the kind of person that wanted to be a passenger princess, but unfortunately I get nauseous when I'm not in control. So that's just not who I am. I want to learn to be able to lean on people, but at the same time, there's value in acknowledging like who you are to your core. And again, just with that like biology versus environment argument, you know, like I'm learning more and more what like really is me, you know, who I am. And then I think, again, I've accepted this or talked about this before, like you can know who you are, but you can also change that. So even if to my core this is like who I am and I'm independent and blah 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 blah, I can still adjust that. I believe even if something is deep-seated in you, like neurologically, like it's in your neural network or it's in your DNA, I believe you can shift that. And that's why I've talked about this before. Like, I wish that I had scans of my brain from like when I was a kid to when I was in college to now, so I could show you like how these different things that I've done to heal have changed my body. Because obviously it's true, you know, it's like in our world, things aren't true unless you've done the specific research and you have the statistics and you have all the equipment to do it and you have a PhD, and then it's like now you can prove that yoga is real. That's like a whole thing we talked about in the therapy world of like a lot of therapists are saying we know that yoga helps, but unfortunately we don't have an article from Harvard University that backs us up, so we have to keep telling people that medication is the way. And that's like bullshit, you know? Like, I should be able to be a living testament to the fact that this stuff works, because I can tell you that when I was 20 to 25, I had joint pain. I needed a handicap permit. I had debilitating migraines. I went from being the valedictorian of my high school to like, I can't remember a thing that I'm reading because cognitively I've declined. That was terrifying for me. Now I am cognitively smarter, sounds like such a silly word, more intelligent than I think I've ever been, and all of these things, like my knees don't hurt anymore, and all of that came from all of these healing modalities that I use. So do they work? Yes. And maybe that's what I'm a poster board girl for. I'm gonna find it one day, the one thing that is me. Who knows? Let me know if you have any ideas. I think that's it for today. I'll talk about chakras next week, I guess. Catch me again on Saturday at about, I think it's 10 a.m., but just find me on Instagram and you can see I'm presenting at the Zen Bar, and I'm going to talk just a little bit about perception. We'll see if I can keep it in 5 minutes. I'll see you all next week. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Have you felt lost, lonely, or maybe even a little bit loony? I talk about these things on my show and how to help them. Mental Melodies, broadcasting live every Monday through Friday at 4 p.m. and every Saturday at 11.